today we are discussing all of the lovely, heavenly semaphores of the Disney princes. Hello everybody, Nicky Marra here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you've all had a fabulous week and are ready for yet another fun ranking video. Now, as you may recall, a long while ago here on the channel, I did an entire video ranking the voices of the Disney princesses. And while we have definitely discussed the Disney princes on the channel here before, either ranking the Disney princes, ranking their fashion, and even with some of them appearing in some of my music videos, we have yet to discuss all of the lovely voices behind some of our favorite princely characters. Disney princes in their movies serve a lot of different purposes, sometimes being a main central figure along with their princess, and some being a rather background character, only appearing for a little short while. But regardless, a very important piece of a Disney prince is his voice, as he is able to speak out to help others, go into battle against Disney villains, and help aid our main Disney princess along her story. And so today, friends, we are taking a look back through Disney history, and we are going to rank every single Disney prince voice. But if you're new to the channel, hi, my name is Nicky Marra, and I'm a Disney content creator. I got my start over on TikTok, but have joined the YouTube community and have been loving making long-form videos for you guys, of which I have brand new videos coming out every single Friday at 5 p.m. So if you haven't already, make sure to hit subscribe down below so that way you never miss out on any future magic from me. And likewise, if you would like to find me on any of my other social medias, my handle is @NickyMarra with 2 Y's and 2 R's, and you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat for even more magic. Now, as always on the channel, we are going to jump into some brief disclaimers, conditions, and then talking points we're going to be sure to talk about for each Disney prince voice on today's list. I have each and every one of those topics timestamped down below in the description box in case you'd like to skip around. But if you would just like to jump right into our ranking video for today, then you can head right to this timestamp. First and foremost, for our disclaimers, I am not associated with the Walt Disney Company, and therefore I do not speak for the brand or the company, and any and all opinions in this video are just my own, and do not reflect those of the brand or the company. But secondly, I welcome any and all opinions surrounding these iconic Disney prince voices down in my comment section. In ranking the Disney prince voices, of course reflecting real-life people, it is not so much a ranking of pitting humans against each other, but more so creating a celebration for all of the wonderful gentlemen who have helped bring some iconic Disney characters to life. This is, of course, just a personal list and my own personal opinions surrounding each and every one of the vocal performances. And so if you happen to have certain favorites that are very different from my own, I more than welcome you to leave all of your thoughts and opinions around your favorite prince voices down in the comment section. And likewise, if I happen to forget one, I, again, more than welcome you to leave your favorites down below. But thirdly, for the disclaimers, I do want to give a big spoiler warning for all of the Disney prince characters and Disney prince movies that we're going to be talking about in today's video. As a part of ranking each and every one of these prince voices, we are going to be talking about how they influence the plot of their movie, and so we could definitely get into some spoiler territory. And so if you don't want anything spoiled for a specific Disney character or Disney movie on today's list, then I more than welcome you to just jump on up to the next number. But next, for the conditions. Today, friends, we are ranking the voices of official Disney princes. In order to be considered an official Disney prince, they must be the love interest to an official Disney princess or Frozen Queen. Likewise, we will also be including voice actors that were featured in Disney sequels. And so there might be some names on today's list that you don't necessarily recognize for the original performance, but because we included some sequel performances over on our Princess Voices video, I definitely wanted to give some inclusion to the princes in today's video. But besides that, friends, that's kind of it for the conditions. They just have to have voiced an official Disney prince. And with all of those disclaimers and conditions out of the way, let's very quickly jump into our talking points we're going to be sure to touch on for each prince voice on today's video. After first naming each Disney prince voice actor, we're going to be talking about the Disney character that they voiced. Secondly, we're going to be identifying whether or not he did the singing, the speaking, or both for the character. Thirdly, we're going to be talking about the films in which you can find the performance of the voice actor. Fourth, we're going to be discussing a brief description of the voice actor's career outside of the Disney company. And for the fifth and final talking point, we're going to be discussing the voice performer's legacy surrounding the vocal performance that they have given their Disney prince. Again, some princes have more representation in their movies movie than others, and some voice actors have returned to voice their character multiple times, and so we are going to be sure to discuss all of the legacy surrounding these voice actors behind our favorite Disney princes. But with all of that out of the way, friends, I believe it is finally time to jump into our ranking video. So if you are ready to discuss all of these wonderful Disney princes, then sit back, relax, grab yourself a snack and a drink, and let's rank Disney prince voices. We are starting today's list all the way down at the bottom at number 17, who is Roger Craig Smith. Now, Roger Craig Smith actually provided the speaking voice to Prince Philip. If you've seen any videos on my channel before, you will know he is not the original voice actor to Prince Philip, but he did provide the voice in Disney Enchanted Tales: Follow Your Dreams, which was a sequel featuring the characters from Sleeping Beauty, which debuted in the year 2007. As for his role type, he did provide the speaking voice, but in this video, Prince Philip does not sing, and so we only have a spoken dialogue from him. As for his career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he is a very well-known voice actor, with his voice appearing in Assassin's Creed, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Batman: Arkham's Origins. And as for his legacy as a Disney prince voice, Roger Craig Smith helped continue Prince Philip's story, as well as his legacy from his original 1959 animation, once again bringing the character to life for young audiences. Considering Enchanted Tales was not a theatrically released animated movie, it was made very readily available on DVD release for a lot of young children to consume. And so even though the Enchanted Tales story may not be as well known as the original 1959 animation, we do get to see a very true to the original Prince Philip in the continuation of his story. Now, even though Prince Philip may not have the most to do in this animated sequel, especially considering he isn't featured in any songs, it is very nice to see a wonderful tip of the hat to the original Prince Philip, and to have yet another very kind portrayal to this character. Now, you all may know I may not be the biggest fan of Disney sequels, but I can definitely acknowledge a really wonderful vocal performance from a voice actor for a Disney character, especially when trying to step into some very big shoes. We're going to be talking about Prince Philip's original voice actor a little bit later on today's list, but I definitely have to give Roger Craig Smith some very big credit for his portrayal of the character in Enchanted Tales. Next, friends, we're going to move on up to number 16 on my list, who is Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson you may know as the original voice actor for the character John Smith. And although John Smith is not technically a prince character, he is often included in the Disney Prince lineup because he is the romantic interest to Pocahontas in the original 1995 animated film. But speaking of, Mel Gibson did provide the original speaking and singing voice to John Smith in the original animated film. As for the film that you can find his voice in, it is in Pocahontas, the 1995 original. And as for his career outside of the Disney Company, it is quite a healthy career. He is an Academy Award-winning actor and director, known for films such as Braveheart, Mad Max, and Lethal Weapon. And as for his legacy as a Disney prince voice, Mel Gibson gave John Smith a lot of charisma, as well as rugged heroism, which really did help to solidify and create Disney's 1990s adventure romance style. I think what stands out the most about Mel Gibson's performance is the charisma and the personality that he injects into John Smith. Although the reason why he ranks all the way down at the bottom, and this is through no fault of his own, is that he is not necessarily a singer. I think his vocals are fine for the animated film, however, when compared to Broadway legend Judy Kuhn, who is the singing voice of Pocahontas, there definitely seems to be a little bit of a gap between their training. This is especially heard in the cut song, If I Never Knew You, but again, I think his vocal performance more than suffices on all of his songs. You're definitely not taken out of the story by anything negative that you're hearing. As you all may know from my previous Disney Prince rankings, John Smith just isn't one of my favorite characters of all time, and so unfortunately the vocal performance goes down along with the character for me personally. But I will be completely honest, one thing I have never disliked about John Smith is the vocal performance. I do think that was very strongly done by Mel Gibson. Again, just on my personal list, he is not one of my favorite characters, therefore I'm not drawn to him, and I'm not particularly engaged with the vocal performance. It is not bad by any means. In fact, I really enjoy certain aspects of it, but because it also ties into the character himself, it does fall lower on my personal list. But another positive I will say about this is that we do get quite a large performance from Mel Gibson in this film. Again, we get both speaking and singing, and John Smith is a very heavily featured character all the way through the runtime of his film. While he doesn't get as many songs as Pocahontas, I would argue that he probably gets an equal amount of screen time. And so seeing as we get to spend quite a bit of time with him, and we also get a very strong character arc from him, it definitely coincides with the vocal performance given by Mel Gibson. Again, nothing bad to say about this vocal performance, just not one of my personal favorites. But next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 15 on my list, who is Rob Paulsen. Now, Rob Paulsen actually provided his voice to the character Prince Eric. He provided both the speaking voice and very few singing lines for the character. However, he did not originate the role of Prince Eric. Rob Paulsen's voice instead can be heard in the direct-to-DVD sequel, The Little Mermaid 2: Return to the Sea. In this film, Prince Eric doesn't necessarily have the most to do, seeing as his character is more so sidelined for the Ariel, Morgana, and Melody arc. But he is present, and I do think Rob Paulsen gives a very wonderful performance, living up to the original Prince Eric. And again, having the first singing lines for the character as well, considering Prince Eric never sang in his original animated film. As for Rob Paulsen's career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he is a prolific voice actor appearing in many well-known TV series such as The Animaniacs, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and even Jimmy Neutron. Even though you may or may not recognize the name, you've definitely heard his voice before. And as for his legacy as an official Disney Prince voice, Rob did a wonderful job maintaining the continuity of Prince Eric's voice, as well as bringing quite a bit of charm and notability to Eric's character for a Disney sequel film. Again, I have ranked all of the sequels of Disney's animated features, and while I can definitely say some of them are not my favorite and don't make the most wonderful choices with some of our favorite animated characters, I actually do not mind at all the story arc that Prince Eric gets in his sequel. What I look for in an animated sequel for a character is a storyline and a vocal performance that lives up to and honors the original character from the original animated film. And in my personal opinion, Rob Paulsen absolutely delivers in terms of his performance of Prince Eric. Again, finally including some singing lines for the prince, especially found in the song Down to the Sea. In a fun way, we get a more well-rounded view of Prince Eric and his devotion to his family. Now, I think it goes without saying that my heart absolutely goes out to all of the original voice actors, but I definitely want to say, even though Rob Paulsen ranks lower on my personal list, I love this vocal performance, and I think he does such a wonderful job at bringing this character to life. Again, I have nothing bad to say about this performance. I very much enjoy it. However, there are some Disney Prince performances that I just happen to love a little bit more. But next, friends, we are going to move on up to number 14 on my list, who is William Phipps. Now, William Phipps is the voice behind one of Disney's first princes, that being Prince Charming. Yes, William Phipps did provide the original speaking voice for Prince Charming in the 1950 animated film Cinderella. As for his role type, he did the speaking role only for the prince, but don't you worry, we'll be talking about the singing voice very shortly. As for the films that you can hear his vocal performance in, it is only the original Cinderella. He did not do any of the sequels, especially seeing as the sequels came out many decades after the original. But as for William Phipps' career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he was a beloved character actor in a lot of 1950s films, as well as TV, often being cast in Western films and also some sci-fi movies. And as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, his legacy as a voice of a Disney prince is honestly one of the longest, considering he voiced one of the earliest Disney princes ever created by the company. Even though he had very few speaking lines in the original animated movie, he gave such warmth and depth to the prince. I think when we reminisce on the animated film of Cinderella, we really do see the prince sort of fade into the background and become a side character in his film. However, his moments on screen really do give such a warmth and kindness to Cinderella, especially considering she faces so much unkindness in her original animated film from her stepfamily. Cinderella's escape from her home and her one night to enjoy the ball really does feel like a breath of fresh air, and along with that entire night, the prince also feels that way as well. I mean, when you think about it, the prince really is the first human character that shows Cinderella kindness in her animated film. He spots her and goes directly towards her. He takes her hand and gives her a kiss on the hand and begins to dance with her. And they spend the night romantically trying to get to know one another. This is a vast difference than any other human character that Cinderella has encountered throughout the rest of her animated film, and so the warmth and kindness of William Phipps's voice behind the prince really does help to tie that bow very nicely on a rather sidelined Disney prince. Again, I have very little negative to say about this vocal performance. I only wish we had a little bit more from him because his voice is so kind and so warm and so welcoming. I wish we got even more in his original animated film. But with that, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 13 on my list, and we're not gonna stray too far from the path. At number 13 is Mike Douglas. Now, you also might recognize Mike Douglas as the voice of Prince Charming. And although we discussed William Phipps providing the speaking voice for Prince Charming in the original 1950 animation, Mike Douglas also did provide a vocal performance for Prince Charming in the 1950 animated movie Cinderella. However, Mike Phipps was brought on to do the singing role for the prince, especially considering he has a lovely duet with Cinderella called So This Is Love. And this is the only time in the animated film we hear Mike Douglas's voice, but it is beautiful nonetheless. As we have already discussed, the animated films where you can hear Mike Douglas's voice is in the original 1950 Cinderella, and as for his career outside of the Walt Disney Company, Mike Douglas was a very popular TV show host, as well as a very well-known singer. In fact, his show, The Mike Douglas Show, actually ran for 2 whole decades. And finally, for Mike Douglas's legacy as an official Disney Prince voice, he also helped to give Prince Charming a lot of personality for a character who has very little screen time. Mike Douglas gives him such a rich, romantic vocal presence, and again, really helps to create the mood of the evening when Cinderella goes to the ball. While I just gave a lot of credit to William Phipps, I also think the exact same credit can be given to Mike Douglas, especially considering when we watch this animated film, we don't even really distinguish the two voices as being different. In research, it's unclear whether or not the two of them crossed paths with this project, but the work that the two gentlemen did to bring the prince to life really does seem so cohesive, and I think that speaks a lot to their vocal talents. The only reason I rank Mike Douglas a little bit above William Phipps is that I feel like his voice is more often heard than William Phipps. Whenever we hear any sort of vocal performance from Prince Charming outside of the original 1950 animated movie, I feel like it's from the song So This Is Love. And so, in my personal opinion, I think Mike Douglas just leaves a little bit longer of a lasting impression in terms of his performance as a Disney Prince voice. Again, the two of them are so close together on this list, and realistically, like, you can't even distinguish the two voices in my personal opinion, but I really do think that his legacy is a little bit more concrete, especially because he is a major part of an iconic Disney romance duet. And so yes, I have to say I absolutely love Mike Douglas's performance of the song So This Is Love for Prince Charming, and he is definitely going to go at number 13 on my list. But next, friends, we're going to move on up to number 12 on my list, who is Zachary Levi. Now, being one of the more recent Disney princes, you might recognize Zachary Levi as the voice of Flynn Rider. He did provide both the speaking and the singing voice to this Disney prince. And as for the films and media that you can hear his voice in, he did in fact originate Flynn Rider's voice in the 2010 animated film Tangled. He also returned for Tangled Ever After, as well as Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, meaning that Zachary Levi has returned for all animated instances of Flynn Rider's appearance, continuing to provide the voice for the character. As for his career outside of the Disney Company, he is an actor appearing in such media as Chuck and Shazam, and he has also done some other work as a stage performer, a voice performer, and a singer. And as for his legacy as a Disney Prince voice, his vocal performance brought a very witty and roguish charm to the thief-turned-Disney prince, and definitely helped to make Flynn Rider one of the more beloved Disney Prince characters from recent times. Again, on my ranking of Disney princes, I definitely talked about how Flynn Rider really seems like an equal to Rapunzel in their animated film, whereas in a lot of other princess films, The princess definitely ranks well above their prince, but considering Zachary Levi's performance held up when compared to his romantic counterpart, of course voiced by Mandy Moore, I really do think that he solidified a great performance of a Disney prince in his animated film. I think it's also fun to note that Zachary Levi has expressed interest in returning if and when Tangled gets the live action adaptation treatment, so who knows, we might be adding a little bit more Tangled lore to Zachary Levi in the future. I think he did a really nice job with this role. I think his roguish charm and his sort of attitude to combat that of Rapunzel's kindness really comes across in the film, and that is why he ranks a little bit higher than every other voice actor we've talked about so far on today's list. But next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 11 on my list, who is the only Disney prince voice actor to voice 2 animated princes. At number 11 is Christopher Daniel Barnes. Now, he is also going to appear later in today's list, but the reason why he ranks at number 11, the character responsible for number 11, is Prince Charming. Yes, as you may recall, Cinderella ended up getting a couple of sequels, and Christopher Daniel Barnes actually provided the speaking voice for Prince Charming in the sequels. As for the type of role he performed, it was speaking role only, especially seeing as Prince Charming doesn't have any songs in the animated sequels. But as for the films in which you can hear Christopher Daniel Barnes' voice in, those would be Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True, and Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. Meaning to date, Christopher Daniel Barnes has done the voice for Prince Charming for every Disney appearance since the original animated film. As for his career outside of the Walt Disney Company, I'm gonna put a brief pause on that for a moment, as we're gonna be talking about Christopher Daniel Barnes a little bit later on today's list, and that's where I'm gonna highlight a lot of his personal career. So let's put a brief pause on that. And as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, for the character of Prince Charming, he did add quite a bit of dialogue and personality to the originally sidelined Disney prince. In my opinion, Prince Charming has a lot more of a personality in the sequels, and I think a lot of this can be attributed to Christopher Daniel Barnes and his performance. This prince is funny, and he has a lot more depth in the sequels, and I think that can definitely be attributed to not only his screen time being upped quite a bit more from the original, but also a very charismatic performance by Christopher Daniel Barnes. Again, we're gonna put a brief pin in talking about Christopher Daniel Barnes, as he is going to appear later on today's list, but for now, he's going to go at number 11 on today's list. But with that, friends, we have reached the top 10 of my favorite Disney prince voices. If you have any guesses as to which voice actors are going to appear in the top 10, make sure to leave all your guesses down below. I always love getting to see if you're able to guess before I give you my list. But next, friends, we're moving on up to number 10 on my list, who is Brad Kane. Now, Brad Kane actually provided his voice to a titular character of a Disney film, that being the young street boy Aladdin. Yes, Brad Kane provided his lovely singing voice to Prince Aladdin, and as for the films that you can hear his voice in, he did appear in the original 1992 animated film Aladdin to originate the role, although he has also appeared in the 2 direct-to-DVD animated sequels, Aladdin: The Return of Jafar and Aladdin: The King of Thieves, where he also provided the singing voice for the prince. As for his career outside of the Disney Company, he was in fact a stage performer in the musical Evita, but he is also a music producer, a songwriter, and an occasional actor. But as for his legacy as a Disney prince voice, being the singing voice of Prince Aladdin, he did in fact provide the performance that won Disney the Academy Award. As we know, the song A Whole New World was a very decorated song with many different awards, and Brad Kane is one half of the vocal performance that ended up winning Disney all of these awards for the song. I love Brad Kane's performance in Aladdin, and I think he gets quite a bit to do in his animated film, which really makes his voice stand out. And he gives such a wonderful, charismatic performance of Aladdin that you can't help but root for him all along his animated film. Yes, even in all of Aladdin's instances of fibbing, we still root for him all along. But since we're talking about Aladdin, friends, let's continue the conversation right now. As next, we're moving on up to number 9 on my list, who is Scott Weinger. Now, Scott Weinger also helped to bring the character of Aladdin to life, as he provided the speaking voice for the animated prince. As for the films in which you can hear his voice, he did in fact voice Aladdin in all of the same projects as Ben Kane, those including originating the role of Aladdin in the 1992 animated film, as well as in Return of Jafar and The King of Thieves, the 2 sequels. And he actually also did the TV series and Kingdom Hearts, if I'm not mistaken. But as for his career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he is an actor best known for portraying the character of Steve on Full House, and later became a TV writer and producer for projects such as Gallivant and Blackish. And as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, he also helped bring the character of Aladdin to life, bringing to the screen a wonderful performance for a beloved street-smart Disney hero. And this performance truly does capture both his wonderful humor as well as his romantic depth. Scott and Brad both did a wonderful job, again, cementing Aladdin as an iconic character and really helping to bring him to life as a beloved Disney hero. And it truly feels like you can't have one without the other, which is why I'm so glad that the two have continued to lend their wonderful voices to our favorite little street rat. And in creating my list, I knew that both of these wonderful Disney voice actors had to rank within my top 10. Ooh, but next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 8 on my list. We're moving into the top half of my list. At number 8, is Jonathan Groff. Now, Jonathan Groff voices the one character on today's list who's not technically considered a Disney prince, but rather, well, the romantic interest of a frozen queen, as Jonathan Groff provides the wonderful speaking and singing voice to the character Kristoff. Now, even though Kristoff is not a prince at the beginning of his story, by the end of Frozen 2, he is indeed engaged to Queen Anna, and so I definitely feel as though it is right to include him on today's list. As we have said, Jonathan Groff provides both the speaking and singing voice to the character, and his voice can be heard in every Frozen project to date, including the original Frozen film, Frozen 2, as well as all of the shorts, which are Frozen Fever and Olaf's Frozen Adventure. As for his career outside of the Disney Company, he is a Tony-nominated Broadway actor for both of the roles he played in Spring Awakening and Hamilton. Likewise, he is also very well known for his TV roles in Glee and Mindhunter. And as for his legacy as a Disney prince, well, Frozen Queen romantic interest, Jonathan Groff definitely helped to give Kristoff his very goofy but romantic energy, and he brings a lot of awkward yet heartfelt sincerity to the role. This, in my opinion, makes Kristoff one of the most endearing Disney prince romantic interests created to this date. As with so much media surrounding Frozen and 2 more films in the future, it goes without saying that Kristoff really does have some of the most screen time of any Disney prince. It gives him the most time to have a character arc and story growth, and likewise, he just always seems to know what to say whenever Queen Anna is in need. It's my personal opinion that Jonathan Groff gives one of the best performances of a healthy relationship between a Disney princess and a Disney prince, and I cannot wait to see all of his future work in the next 2 animated films within the Frozen franchise. Ooh, but next, friends, we are moving on up to number 7 on my list, who is Donny Osmond. Now, Donny Osmond, you may recall, lent his wonderful singing voice to the character of Li Shang. He did in fact originate the role in the 1998 animated film Mulan. However, his voice can also be heard in the sequel film, and as for the work he provided for the role, he did in fact supply the singing voice for the Disney prince, not necessarily the speaking voice, but we'll be talking about that very shortly. But seeing as he did the singing voice, we also got an iconic performance for the song I'll Make a Man Out of You, and we can attribute all of that to Donny Osmond. As for his career outside of the Disney Company, he is a pop singer and entertainer. He is a part of the Osmonds Family Band, with a decades-long TV, music, and stage career. Donny Osmond is very well known in the arts, and having a voice as strong as his for a Disney prince, and especially on a song that's as insanely good as I'll Make a Man Out of You, was absolutely solidifying him in the top 10 of today's list. And likewise, as for his legacy as a voice of a Disney prince, it goes without saying he delivered one of Disney's most iconic songs, of course, I'll Make a Man Out of You, and his performance also helped to give Shang's training montage legendary status within the company. His performance of the song is just so motivational, like, it gets the blood pumping, and it's such a great part of the film, and again, one of my favorite parts of the film, it's attributed to Donny Osmond. Absolutely love this performance, and let's continue the conversation on Li Shang. As next, we're moving on up to number 6 on my list, who is BD Wong. Now, BD Wong also can be attributed to the iconic Disney character, Li Shang, and although Li Shang is not technically a prince character, he is the love interest to an official Disney princess, Mulan. As for the work that BD Wong provided for the character, he did provide the speaking voice for the Disney prince, and his work can be heard in the 1998 original animated film Mulan, as well as the sequel Mulan 2. As for BD Wong's career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he is a Tony Award-winning stage actor for M. Butterfly. He has done numerous TV roles, including Law & Order, SVU, and Mr. Robot, and he is also very well known for his film work, especially in the Jurassic Park series. And as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, he is known for giving Shang a dignified and very important presence in his film. He balances military authority with romantic vulnerability, and he also gives us a very strong character arc for Li Shang, especially when faced with tragedy. As you may remember, in the animated film, Li Shang does indeed lose his father during the events of the film, and it is in the speaking voice that we actually hear this character go through these events. BD Wong gives such a wonderful performance of the speaking voice of Li Shang that I had to include him in the top 10, and even though I'll Make a Man Out of You is very iconic, I love the emotional vulnerability that Li Shang has in his film, and we have to attribute that aspect of him to BD Wong. Yes, the two voice actors for Li Shang had to be included in my top 10. I am absolutely solid in my decision, but with that being said, friends, we are now going to move on up to the top 5 of today's list. Again, if you have any guesses as to who's going to rank in the top 5, leave your guesses down below. But yes, with that, friends, we're going to move on up to number 5 on my list, who is Bruno Campos. Now, Bruno Campos you might recognize as the voice of Prince Naveen. Now yes, Bruno Campos provided the original speaking and singing voice for Prince Naveen in the 2009 animated film, The Princess and the Frog. However, considering we haven't had any official Disney media from the animated film to date, this is the only project we can hear his voice in. Regardless, even though it's only one film, it is iconic enough to break into the top 5. As for Bruno Campos's career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he was a TV actor in Jessie, ER, and The DA, and he later left acting to become a lawyer. But as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, he brought a flirtatious and playful charm to the Prince of Maldonia, and through that contributed very heavily to the film's modern romantic dynamic and bringing Disney princesses into the new era. It is no secret that Prince Naveen absolutely is one of my favorite Disney princes, but it is the vocal performance, truly for me, that brings this character so heavily to the forefront of all of the other characters in the prince category. Bruno Campos brings so much life to this character. We really feel as though, throughout different parts of his film, he is multifaceted and very deep as an animated character. He has the moments of vulnerability when he's falling in love with Princess Tiana. However, he also has the moments of selfishness at the beginning of his film, where we definitely see there's a lot of room for growth. But that is all growth that we definitely see throughout the plot of the animated film. Again, I love this performance of a Disney prince, and even though we haven't gotten any media from him since the original animated film, he did actually appear at the grand opening of Tiana's Bayou Adventure, so he is definitely still in the Disney loop, and it is definitely a big hope from me that if we get any other media surrounding Princess and the Frog in the future, that Bruno Campos would definitely be a part of that project. Yes, he's easily one of my favorite Disney prince voices, and absolutely had to rank within my top 5. Oh, but next, friends, we're moving on up to number 4 on my list, who is Robbie Benson. Now, Robbie Benson provided the voice of one character, but technically 2 different forms of the character, as he provided the speaking and singing voice for the Beast, as well as the speaking voice for the Prince, which is the human version of the Beast. Because the human version of the Beast is nameless. And if you want to know why, I have an entire video talking about nameless and unnamed Disney characters, which I'll link up above for you. But yes, as for his role, Robbie Benson provided the speaking voice for the Beast as well as the Prince. And interestingly enough, different animal roars were actually mixed into his vocal performance. However, in all of the emotional dialogue and in the song Something There, where we actually hear the Beast sing, that is all purely Robbie Benson's voice. As for the films in which you can hear his performance, you can in fact hear his performance in the original 1991 animated film, Beauty and the Beast, as well as in both sequels that were created for the film, The Enchanted Christmas and Belle's Magical World. As for Robbie Benson's career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he is indeed an actor appearing in films such as Ice Castles and Ode to Billy Joe, and he is also a very well-known director for such sitcoms as Friends and Ellen. And as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, he created a nuanced and layered performance for the role of the Beast, who in his animated film underwent a deep personal transformation. And in my opinion, this honestly makes the Beast one of Disney's most complex animated princes. When we think about the film Beauty and the Beast, I don't believe there is any other actor that truly could have done Beast the justice that Robbie Benson did, and I love how other mixed media, such as the animal sounds, were mixed into his performance. It adds so much more, while also retaining all of the emotional vulnerability that Robbie brought to the role. I love this performance, knew it had to rank in my top 5, and I am very confident at my placement of Robbie Benson as the Beast. But next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 3 on my list, and this one might surprise some of you. At number 3 is Christopher Daniel Barnes. Now yes, we've already discussed Christopher Daniel Barnes, but he is ranked twice on today's list because he has provided the speaking voice for 2 animated princes. But the Disney prince that lands him at number 3 on my list today is Prince Eric. Now yes, Christopher Daniel Barnes did provide the speaking voice, as Prince Eric is a speaking character only, and his work for the character can only be heard in the original 1989 animated film, The Little Mermaid. And although that is the only animated film for Little Mermaid that he did also appear in the Little Mermaid TV series, as well as the Kingdom Hearts video games, where he also voiced Prince Eric. But as for Christopher Daniel Barnes' career outside of the Disney company, he is a TV and voice actor, and notably the voice of Spider-Man in the 1994 animated series, as well as some other iconic performances such as in the Brady Bunch movie. But as for his legacy as a Disney prince, he definitely voiced one of the most popular and modernized Disney princes, bringing charm and relatability to the role. I love this performance of Christopher Daniel Barnes in his animated film. Likewise, I also love that he is still in the Disney family. We still to this day get to see videos from conventions where both Christopher Daniel Barnes and Jodie Benson, the original speaking and singing voice for Ariel, still engage very heavily with their original animated film. They always make themselves readily available to answer fan questions and also do meet and greets. And likewise, Christopher Daniel Barnes not only did work for Prince Eric, but as we discussed earlier on today's list, he also came back to provide a voice for Prince Charming in the Cinderella sequels. He is multifaceted, and I absolutely adore his work in the original 1989's The Little Mermaid. Ooh, but next, friends, we're gonna move on up to number 2 on my list, who is Harry Stockwell. Harry Stockwell is the OG Disney Prince voice, especially seeing as he provided the speaking and singing voice for the Prince. Again, another unnamed Disney prince. But we are of course talking about the prince from the 1937 Disney animated classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Harry Stockwell did provide both the speaking and singing voice for the character, although his speaking lines are quite minimal. And seeing as he was the original animated Disney prince and that there were no follow-up sequels to Snow White, the original animated film is the only Disney media in which we can hear his voice. But as for Harry Stockwell's career outside of the Walt Disney Company, he was indeed a Broadway performer, best known for starring in the musical Oklahoma and other various stage musicals. But as for his legacy as a Disney prince voice, Harry Stockwell was the blueprint for every Disney prince that came after him. He set the template for romantic heroism in animated films, and created a very iconic voice for a character who has very limited screen time. His gorgeous rendition of one song, both at the beginning of the animated film and the ending of the animated film, really helped to bookend this film and create a presence for this character that is synonymous with Snow White's joy. Likewise, his character is also sung about quite a bit in the original animated film, and so even though he isn't necessarily seen on screen, he does feel ever present throughout the animated film. I so adore the work that Harry Stockwell did for the animated prince, because we truly would not have the canon of Disney prince characters we have without his original work. It's almost like the respect that we pay for Snow White has to also be paid to the prince, because both of them were the originals, and none of the other work by any of the other people in today's video would have ever happened without these two. Yes, I adore Harry Stockwell's performance of the prince. It is nothing short of iconic and just barely missed the number 1 placement on my list. But yes, friends, with that, we have reached number 1 on my list of favorite Disney prince voices. Have you possibly guessed who it could be? Yes, friends, at number 1 on my list is Bill Shirley. Now, Bill Shirley you may recognize as the voice of Prince Philip. Bill Shirley did indeed provide both the speaking and singing voice in the original 1959 animated classic Sleeping Beauty. However, once again, much like Harry Stockwell, this is the only animated film where we can hear his performance. As for his career outside of the Disney company, Bill Shirley was a singer and actor very well known for his performance in stage musicals, as well as radio and films, which ranged from 1940s all the way up to the 1960s. His career was primarily in singing for films and for live performances with rather limited acting roles. But as for his legacy as the voice of a Disney prince, he is beloved for being the first Disney prince to have a developed personality and active role in his story. And his rich tenor voice helped to make Once Upon a Dream an iconic love duet in Disney's canon. Now, you all may know from my ranking of Disney duets that Once Upon a Dream is without a doubt one of my favorite Disney songs of all time, not even counting all the other duets. The vocal performance that Bill Shirley delivered alongside actress Mary Costa is nothing short of pure Disney magic. Especially considering Bill Shirley didn't do a whole lot of acting in his career, but more so voice and vocal performance, I really do feel like we get a lot of character depth from Philip. He has moments of comedy and deep intellectual thought, especially when sort of having an intellectual battle with his father. Likewise, he also comes off as very charming in his animated film, but also very brave and sincere. Even though he falls in love with Aurora quite quickly, he is willing to risk everything to save her in the end. And so yes, friends, not only for having one of the most beautiful Disney duets of all time, but also giving the future of Disney princes depth and emotional vulnerability on screen, that is why Bill Shirley ranks as my #1 favorite Disney prince voice. Whew. But with all of that, friends, we have discussed 17 of Disney's most iconic animated prince voices. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had so much fun diving into all of the careers of these iconic Disney prince voices. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below so that way you never miss out on any future magic from me. And likewise, if you would like to find me on any of my other social media platforms, my handle is @Nicky Marra with 2 I's and 2 R's. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat for even more magic. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you love all of the behind the scenes work of Disney films and love to hear a lot about other Disney voice acting, I'd more than welcome you to check out my ranking of Disney princess voices, where we paid homage to a lot of the iconic voices behind some of our favorite princesses. But likewise, I'll also leave a link up above in case you're interested to my full ranking playlist in case you want to discover all of my Disney favorites, from not only the Disney parks, but also Disney animated movies and Disney characters. And as always, if you have any suggestions as to videos you would like to see in the future, I more than welcome you to leave all of your thoughts and opinions down in the comments down below. And also make sure to give your favorite Disney prince voice some love down in the comments. But yes, with all of that, friends, I will say thank you so much for watching. Stay magical, and until next week, I'll see you all real soon.